Let's have this discussion now. Africa's largest bourse, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, yesterday buckled under its biggest trading day in 15 years. The much-publicized share swap between Naspers and Prosus, that's a new tech firm established by Naspers, was finalised on Tuesday. The record-breaking deal saw over 145 billion rand of Naspers Prosus stocks traded, causing significant delays in processing those trades. Now, trading finally opened more than 5 hours later yesterday, becoming one of the biggest market stories in recent memory. What should you and I make of it? Well, let's bring in wealth manager at Randswiss, that's Viv Govender, who joins us now via our video link to unpack the implications for traders and the market in general. Viv, thanks very much indeed for your time. It's great to have you on the AM report. Let's begin with some context to ensure we're all on the same page here. The JSE essentially had to close for a moment yesterday because there was too much trading taking place. Is that a good or a bad thing?
It's not a good thing. Look, basically what happened was they had more than the record level of transactions happening on one day. The systems just weren't able to handle it. It's like, imagine a pipe that couldn't take the flow that goes through it. And it kind of shut down, and it took them about, until about 2:30, I think it was, to reopen, which is by any measure not a good thing to have occurred.
Right. So it almost feels as though the JSE was incapacitated to see through this massive deal between Naspers and Prosus. I mean, again, in my mind, these are electronic transactions that are handled by machines and not people. So where was the fault, if you like? Is this just software that simply can't handle the kind of deals that are being secured on the JSE?
Yeah, it's just infrastructure that couldn't handle what went through it. The issue here is that, these systems are legacy systems. They've been around for a long time. We're talking decades. I heard apparently that some of the stuff is actually written on MS-DOS. Most of your viewers would be probably wouldn't have been born yet when people were using MS-DOS 30 years ago. So we were talking about a situation where we had a system that was built on a system that was built on a system over time. No one went back and redid everything from scratch to make it more efficient, more modernized. Because quite frankly, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it, because these are very complicated things. And the worst thing that you can do, quite frankly, is basically break a system that was working reasonably well. But that being said, when we have these unusual events, these legacy systems just don't handle it. If you recall back in, say, the year 2000, where they had the 2000 millennium bug, basically, all that was not having enough numbers to change the date. But it was something that was real and had to be changed. So yeah, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, it's a simple, probably fix in this thing, but it's quite a complicated issue to go back into these systems and try and make sure that they're modernized and able to deal with any possible occurrence that might occur.
Right. We'll speak about the swap deal in just a moment. I just want to first get a handle of the consequences of the JSE not trading for about 5 hours yesterday. In what state do you reckon that actually left the JSE itself, and what are the implications for traders?
Well, I don't think it makes a huge difference for investors, because if you're willing to buy or sell a particular share because you thought it was a good value share and wanted to hold on to it for a longer period of time, say a year or two, maybe even longer, it doesn't make a difference if you did yesterday and did today. Yes, there was some news that came out. We had some trading results, etc. Some earnings forecasts and so on that were changed, and obviously that wasn't reflected immediately. But you still be able to do it in the same day. So from an actual investment point of view, it wasn't there. Maybe in terms of trading, people that were basically day trading and that kind of stuff, they lost the day. There's some revenue, of course, lost for brokerages, for the JSE itself as well. That being said, I do think it was more reputational than actual, an impact on the traders, or more importantly, the investors that use the JSE.
Yeah. Naspers, as the most valuable stock on the JSE, is always going to have some dent when it makes big deals, especially the kind that it made with Prosus. Tell us a bit more about the deal itself and whether or not the JSE couldn't have preempted that this would be the impact on its systems.
Yeah, Prosus basically is look, here's the deal. Naspers is a company that bought a share of a company in China called Tencent. It's a South African company that, say, 20 years ago, when I bought a piece of a company in China called Tencent, that company Tencent turned out to be one of these internet giants. it has gone up over 4,000 times, not 4,000%, 4,000 times in value since Naspers purchased their stake in it. You're not going to get that kind of return outside a casino or outside a lotto ticket. It's a huge, huge return in 20 years. Now, what it has meant is that Naspers has actually grown too big for the South African market. And that meant that Naspers doesn't reflect the true value of its holding in Tencent alone, let alone all its other investments. So there's this massive gap, and this massive gap is something in the value of hundreds of billions of rands. And the key, one of the main goals of the Naspers leadership has been to try and reduce this discount. If they can reduce this discount by even say 50% from what it is right now, cut it in half, they'll be creating hundreds of billions of rands of value for their shareholders. And what management has to do is create value for their shareholders. So they've been trying to do various things over time. And the one they've come up with recently is that they've come up with this idea of having this company called Prosus, which holds all of Naspers, international holdings, primarily Tencent and a couple other things, and put it in a exchange that is a bit more, has a bit more capacity to hold something this big. This is basically like something that's too big for the JSE to hold. And this is listed in Europe. Now, they've come up with the idea, what they will do is they'll sell part of Naspers to Prosus, so Prosus to Naspers, they'll do some kind of swap deal, allowing less of that discount to occur, and that was what that deal was about. If it succeeds, it creates, like I said, hundreds of billions of rands of value for shareholders, which is obviously a huge amount of value out of nothing, effectively, just by removing that discount.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me as well. It's almost like the creation of value, which is a bit strange because value needs to be taken from some place for it to re-emerge elsewhere. But I imagine that's another discussion altogether. Many people, of course, might have an interest in trying to learn whether or not the problem we saw in the JSE yesterday is unique at all. Is this something that's happened elsewhere in the world where essentially a market couldn't continue trading because of the fact that it was inundated with trade deals, essentially?
I mean, we've had issues like this in the past. I mean, even in very sophisticated markets. A few years ago, there was what's called the flash crash. And that, from what we know so far, was done by a single person almost sitting in the UK, and that brought down the US markets for a bit of time. These systems can sometimes be vulnerable to these kind of things. So it's not a one-off occurrence.
Right.
The problem with the JSE is that obviously some of the issues we've had in the past, little while, it obviously doesn't, enhance its reputation. Even as, for instance, the Nasdaq or the New York Stock Exchange can get by, by saying this is a once-off event and almost the reputation carries them through. We're not treated the same way in a certain way, and so this may harm our reputation slightly more. But no, it's not something that's unique to us. Like I said, in that case, it wasn't the biggest company basically having this share swap thing go through. It was a case of a single individual, from what law enforcement is saying, causing this to happen. Like I said, if you Google the flash crash, you'll see it was a huge event. We're talking about again billions of dollars worth of impact and caused by a single individual.
Viv Govender, thanks very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. Some interesting stuff taking place in the world of business. Viv Govender is Randswiss Portfolio Manager. Once again, thanks very much indeed.